The Nokia N8 was and still is a pretty great camera phone, as we have seen from our previous video where we compared it with the Pixel 3 XL. It was a flagship back then, and now we have the Poco F1, which is a flagship in its own right and also retails at a similar price point, albeit several years later. This is Sandeep from RevAtlas, and let's see what the cameras on a device costing slightly over 20k rupees gave us back in 2010 and gives us now in 2019. This video is brought to you by ZestMoney. Visit zestmoney.in and avail instant loans to buy your favorite smartphone. It's an entirely digital process with high approval rates, seamless EMI payments, and even zero pre-closure charges. But the best part of all is the 0% interest on most merchants, and you don't even need a credit card or a credit score either. Let's discuss the hardware first. The N8 features a large 12MP 1x1.83-inch sensor with Carl Zeiss optics, xenon flash, mechanical shutter, as well as an ND filter that'll take effect in those overly bright situations. All that's impressive even by today's standards, but the f2.8 aperture is less so. Most phones have larger apertures even on their telephoto lenses and front-facing cameras, but the N8 truly enables some awesome photography abilities. The Poco F1 packs a dual camera setup, one with a 12MP Sony IMX363 1x2.55-inch sensor, f1.9 aperture, and 1.4 micron pixel size, as well as a secondary 5MP depth sensor. The primary camera also features dual pixel autofocus. Coming to the photos, the first difference you will notice is the way that the images are processed. The processing is a lot more natural and laid back on the N8 compared to the more contrasty and saturated photos on the Poco F1. It's even more apparent if you turn on the AI feature on the Poco F1, which further adjusts contrast and saturation based on the scene. The white balancing is excellent on the Nokia N8 and the focus is always bang on, albeit a bit slow to lock on. In comparison, the Poco F1 is almost always in focus thanks to a dual pixel autofocus and is accurate as well. But in low light situations, the red AF-SS light allows the N8 to get the focus perfectly, while the Poco F1 struggles at times. The resolution on both the phones is the same, but the N8 produces smaller file sizes and the images also carry lesser detail. This is because of restrictions on the processing front. Phones like the Poco F1 nowadays carry so much computing power to perform complex algorithms and handle large file sizes and even capture raw photos. The N8 on the other hand wasn't powerful enough to handle in-camera HDR, let alone raw photos. There isn't true RAW capture on the Nokia N8, which otherwise would have helped quite a bit, but you can install third-party apps to capture JPEGs in 100% quality, but it doesn't really drastically improve the quality over the stock camera application. As a result, the images are largely flatter looking compared to a Poco F1, and if you want to get better dynamic range as well, you have to resort to manually bracketing exposures for shadows, midtones and highlights, and combining them with third-party software. If you're doing so, it's also better to place it on a tripod or stable surface to avoid deviations in framing. Doing so actually gives much better results that are on par, if not better than the Poco shots in terms of dynamic range. It could have been even better if we had raw files from the N8 or even higher quality JPEGs, but the processing hardware limits it. This just shows how advanced the image sensor on the N8 was despite being a device from 2010. In terms of low light, the N8 performs pretty well for such an aged device, but limitations of the ISP and smaller f2.8 aperture lead to higher noise levels than most flagships nowadays. Back then there was little software tweaks to rely on bringing such good images, so Nokia put on a xenon flash on the Nokia N8. It's really powerful and can even light up a pitch dark scene really well. Of course, this changes the way the scene looks since the flash drowns out other lights and some color, but it still gives a usable shot with very little noise and a well exposed frame. The Poco F1 has a dual LED flash too, which is powerful, but nothing nearly as powerful as the Nokia N8. Nonetheless, you don't have to use the flash as the images aren't as impressive, and you're better off using the phone without flash or perhaps even using the night mode, which creates a visually better looking and well exposed image, albeit with more noise. One more thing that many people asked me to talk about in the next video was the ability of the N8 to freeze a moving object, or more specifically a fan in motion. Thanks to the xenon flash, the N8 is able to freeze the fan and capture it nearly perfectly still, as if it was never turned on in the first place. The Poco F1 and most other phones of today can't do this. It makes sense on a moving car or some other object, but I personally won't be photographing my ceiling fan at all, but this result is included just so that you guys can understand the difference between the two. In terms of depth of field, the larger sensor on the Nokia N8 gives a pretty shallow depth of field, which is more pronounced if you get closer to the object or subject. Focusing close becomes easier if you enable the macro mode, and focusing distance also remains more or less the same as the Poco, but you can get much more pronounced shallow depth of field on the Poco with the help of portrait mode that makes use of the secondary 5MP depth sensor. The front-facing camera on the Nokia N8 has tiny VGA resolution compared to front-facing 20 megapixel unit with f2 aperture, but an uncommon 0.9 micron pixel size on the Poco F1. Xiaomi is claiming that the pixel binning technology combines 4 pixels into one, thus giving the effect of a 1.8 micron pixel size as well. Now the front camera on both these devices are totally different creatures and the image quality is also very different. You should however consider the fact that the Nokia N8 was actually a product before the selfie era, where people never really used the front camera all that much apart from a rare video call or so, and the difference is even more apparent under low light conditions. You also get bokeh effects and background blur with portrait mode on the front camera on the Poco F1, which the Nokia N8 doesn't have. In terms of software processing, there's a huge difference between these two phones that is mostly limited by the processor and other hardware inside the N8. However, if you look at the hardware that the Nokia N8 packs, it surely is better than the one on the Poco F1, save for the smaller aperture. Hopefully we'll see more advanced sensors on smartphones soon, which coupled with the more advanced processing would yield great results. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you visit zestmoney.in and avail instant loans to purchase your dream products, be it a smartphone, electronics, furniture, and more across Flipkart, Amazon, and more than 100 other partners.